May you live in interesting times. I'm sure you've heard that phrase. It's supposedly this ancient Chinese curse, though honestly, no one's ever been able to verify the origins. And it seems that we've always had this feeling that we're living in interesting times, something that could be seen as a blessing or a curse. One thing I personally find interesting about our current times is this sort of bipolar nature of things. For example, on this podcast, I've been super clear about my love of and fascination for psychological research. Psychology is more popular now than ever, but it's also more openly criticized and scrutinized than ever before. Bipolar. Religion is the same. It's not at all odd to hear some well-known figure publicly thank God or say to a crowd, "I'm a Christian," and yet at the same time, Christians, especially in the United States it seems, are being openly criticized and vilified in ways that would have been really unthinkable just 50 years ago. Bipolar. So, yes, I do believe we are living in interesting times, which leads me to an important question. What does it really mean in these interesting bipolar times to say that I'm a Christian? If I took my cues from the world around me, I might say that a Christian is someone whose primary virtue is tolerance, a good person with a true live and let live kind of attitude. But that feels off the mark to me. Back in 2009, author and theologian Leonard Sweet asked a similar question to those who were connected to him on Facebook and Twitter. Now, it was actually research for doctoral student Thomas Ingram's thesis on, quote, the 100 words that make us Christian, end quote. In the finished paper, Ingram included a word cloud of all the responses he received. 174 words were submitted and just over 1,000 votes were cast in order to rank those words from most important, descriptive, and encompassing to least. The highest ranked words were hear, as in H-E-A-R, grace, love, Jesus, and bless. The next highest were mystery, scandalous, fellowship, relationship, Trinity, shalom, faith, and redeemed. Interesting times require interesting definitions, I suppose. There were a bunch of other words on the list. And then way down at the very bottom were the words considered by the voters as the least helpful, least important, least descriptive, and least encompassing of the 100 words that make us Christian. The word I submitted was near the bottom. It was the word disciple. It seemed pretty straightforward to me, but clearly, at least among that group, I was in the extreme minority. It just wasn't interesting enough. But more than a decade before this research project, I had already conducted my own investigation into this topic. I wanted to know for myself in simple, easy-to-grasp language, what does the Bible itself have to say on this subject? And that's when I saw something that I had not yet noticed before that time. Jesus himself seemed to give preference to the word disciple, so much so that he actually used it to clearly define and delineate what it meant to be his disciple. I mean, it was a real aha moment for me. It completely changed my life. So how did Jesus clearly describe a disciple? Generally speaking, there are 4 broad categories which I will refer to as the discipleship framework, as in the 4 sides of a picture frame. And here they are. Number 1, a disciple of Christ knows God. Now, this is not necessarily the same as stepping up to a microphone and saying, "First off, I'd like to thank God." Though, to be perfectly clear, I'm always happy when I hear someone say that. No, a disciple, according to Jesus, has more than simply an awareness or acknowledgement of God. There are actually 2 Greek words used throughout John's Gospel which are really informative. Eido, an informational knowledge, and gnosko, a relational knowledge. John 14, verses 1 through 12 is a good example of the differences. Jesus said, "You know, Eido, the way." But the disciples didn't get what he was saying. "The way to where?" they asked. Then Jesus said it plainly. "Look, I am the way. You know, gnosko, me. So you automatically know, Ido, the way. Jesus said in John 10:14, I am the good shepherd. I know, gnosko, relational knowledge, my own, and my own gnosko, me. Psalm 9:10 says that those who know his name will put their trust in him. Is he your Jehovah Jireh, your Jehovah Sitkanu, your Jehovah Makedishkim? Do you know him as shepherd, as truth, as savior, as redeemer? You see, the more you get to know him, gnosko, the more you will love him. And the more you love him, the more you'll want to know him. That's the first and most important mark of a disciple. There are plenty of people in this world who know about God, Ido, but disciples really know him, gnosko. Additionally, Jesus gives 3 more marks of a disciple that all of us should memorize. Number 2, a disciple of Christ lives for God. Jesus said in John 8:31, if you continue to follow my teaching, you are really my disciples. In fact, this is really the primary way that we show that we know and love God. In John 14:15, Jesus says, if you love me, you will obey my commandments. If you truly know and love him, it will affect your behavior. You'll live for him and you'll obey his word. Number 3, a disciple of Christ loves others. In John 13, verses 34 through 35, Jesus said to his disciples, I give you a new commandment to love one another. Just as I have loved you, you are also to love one another. Everyone will know by this that you are my disciples, if you love one another. If we need a guide for what it means to love others, let's be honest. The list in 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 8, could keep us busy for the rest of our lives. I'd personally be happy just to be known by everyone as a patient and kind person. And that's only the first 2 in this long list. And it's a pretty safe bet that if the church could learn to stop fighting amongst ourselves and show some genuine brotherhood and love towards one another, I'm fairly certain the rest of the world would take notice. It's just a thought. Number 4, a disciple of Christ bears much fruit. Jesus said in John 15, verse 8, my Father is honored by this, that you bear much fruit and show that you are my disciples. So, what is this fruit and how do we go about producing it? Galatians 5:16 through 26 gives us a list of spiritual fruit, the result of the Spirit of God living in and through us. Any hungry soul should be able to gather some of the sweet produce from a disciple's life and be both nourished and energized. But there's also a physical side to fruitfulness. You see, an orange tree is only considered fruitful if it produces more oranges. By the same token, a disciple is only fruitful when he or she makes more disciples. Any definition of a disciple which doesn't include these 4 items, this discipleship framework, is woefully and dangerously inaccurate. So how did Jesus himself define those who are, in his words, really his disciples? He said his disciples know God, live for God, love others, and bear much fruit. These are the boundaries, the discipleship framework, if you will. And as I've always tried to teach my own children, if we can stay inside those 4 boundary lines, then we can really do whatever we want. Of course, we'll always have greater success if we also pay attention to the special talents that God gives us and for the assignments that he wants to lead us to. But as long as we stay inside the framework, that's what really defines us as a disciple. For me, it points back to the very title of this podcast. When I say a better mind, I have hundreds of words and ideas and concepts and tips that I think fit from psychology and theology and more. But first and foremost, I believe a better mind is a righteous mind, one set on continually learning what it means to truly know God, live for God, love others, and bear much fruit. And when I say a better life, I also have hundreds of words and ideas and concepts and tips that I think can fit from psychology and theology and more. But first and foremost, I believe a better life is a righteous life, one set on practicing what it means to know God, live for God, love others, and bear much fruit. Now, clearly, I'm not there yet, but I keep learning and I keep practicing every single day. And I keep reminding myself that a better mind always leads to a better life.